Hello, and welcome to the Infinite Love Podcast. This is a place where we share how love can transform negative emotions and pain into strength. We talk about all things related to love, positivity, and kindness. And I am your host, Corinne Camara. Welcome to episode 5, From Hopelessness to Divine Connection. Today we are talking to CC Treadway, a multidisciplinary artist and energy healer. She has been leading artists, healers, business people, entrepreneurs, and holistic practitioners into their fullest expressed potential for almost 20 years, while working as an artist, video editor, and musician. Her unique ability to synthesize right brain creative intuition with left brain functionality creates powerful, practical, and magical results in her clients' life and health. And today we're talking about the parts of ourselves that get hopeless and in deep, deep pain, and how connecting to a divine source can be an amazing opportunity for transformation. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome. I'm so excited to do the Infinite Love podcast with you, Cece. It's been a pleasure to have known you and getting to know you more. So I'm excited to hear more about your story.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. This is a really beautiful opportunity, and it's just nice to sync in with you, and hopefully we can come up with something to inspire or help others.
So you're a healer, an energy
Yes.
medicine healer, sound healer. Tell me a little bit about how you came to be the practitioner that you are today.
Well, it's a big question, right? Definitely a life path, definitely a life journey.
Mhm.
And when I was very young, I my parents actually we used to hang out in the ARE community, which was started by this trance channel, Edgar Casey.
Oh,
And
yes.
Edgar Casey, yeah, yeah. So we were a part of that community in
Oh,
my
really?
formative years, yeah.
Wow.
And he was no longer alive, but it was this very spiritual, loving, a scene like, Christianity without all the crazy, just
Yeah.
this beautiful energy that was always streaming through. And so I kind of grew up with that around me, and we used to go see channelers and healers. And there was this one time where we saw a channeler, and they came up to me, and I was like 3, and told my mom she'll be a healer if she chooses.
Hmm.
And it was something like, since my mom was so open, she was like, ooh, there was no stigma on these things in my family, thankfully. And
That's great.
so I feel like she really nourished the that energy, the spiritual energy. And I felt like I always knew I would be a healer. I was always interested in spirituality and
Mhm.
indigenous spirituality and on all this stuff. And I guess in my 20s, I studied a lot, and then I finally went to the Barbara Brennan School of Healing in my late 20s, and which is a 4-year mind, body, spirit energy healing personal transformation program. And
Mhm.
I did that when I felt like I was old enough, because being a healer seemed like a really daunting job.
It is. It is.
Yeah, I wasn't
Yeah.
wrong about that.
No, there's a lot of lessons that you need to learn to be able to do this work. And what
Mhm.
was your love lesson that really brought you to your knees, so to speak, where you really had to look deep within yourself and figure out who you are and what you wanted to bring to the world in order to find your purpose and make that the pillar of your life?
Well, it's interesting that you say love, because I mean, that's the whole thing that you're doing. But beyond that, like, it was definitely terrible things that happened in relationships and with men that inspired my healing path.
Mm,
And first in my early 20s, where I went through, unfortunately, like a lot of women, I went through a rape. I went
mm,
through um, really terrible lying, cheating, disrespecting. Just I got caught up in some like a really dark time. And the pain that and with the disbelief that I went in at that time, propelled me into healing journey. I started making films about my healing process. And again, I was always interested in it, but the particular thing that I was going to do like erupted at that time. There was a level of pain from one of the breakups that was so severe, I didn't even know myself anymore. It was like Pandora's box opened from my heart, and I could not control the amount of anger, sadness, and darkness that was like just flowing out of me. The only thing I could do was like stand in front of a camera and just start sharing all about it. So it was like these performance art pieces, and my desperation of like feeling like I had nothing to stand on anymore. And through that process and people, women seeing my films, I started having all these women come up to me and be like, oh my God, you're finally putting a voice to the things I've been going through. Like everybody thinks this is just how it is when I'm dying. I don't know like how I'm going to make it. And he keeps coming back and blah, blah, blah. And it was like, what I saw was that women were suffering,
right?
Because there was no right to even have these feelings at that time. So that became like a really profound catalyst for my personal healing journey, because I couldn't understand why I went what I felt like from a really strong, independent woman to like this pile of grief and insecurity and insanity. Like I felt crazy with being treated like that and having nowhere really to go to.
Right.
I had another incident happen in my late 20s while I was in healing school, where I was raped in Puerto Rico again.
Oh no.
And this I had been working so hard, and I had so much karma in this area of love and relationships. I mean, no matter what I did, it was like just these terrible things would happen to me. Meanwhile, I'm in therapy, I'm in healing school, I'm doing all the things, I'm processing the past lives, I'm, you know, reading all the books, I'm doing whatever I could. And then this happened in Puerto Rico, and I just had a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
And it was that nervous breakdown that led me to a healer who was recommended to me. And I just said to him, like, I'm done. Like, I'm working my butt off here, and it's only getting worse. And he just looked at me and started crying, because he was so tuned in to what I had been through. He could really feel what was happening, and he had a really strong connection with his guidance. And he just said, listen, get on the table. You don't have to do anything. You've done enough work here. Like, you're not responsible for this. And he did a healing and removed all this trauma, connected me with my higher self. And that was it. I was reborn. It was like a born again experience. My divine self started flooding through my body, and I started channeling from that point forward my higher self. I went into a state, like I slept for 24 hours after that healing. And when I woke up, I was in a state of like nirvana. I had been reconnected to God. That's all I cared about, really. I was such a spiritual person. That connection was everything to me. So to feel it so palpably and to know who I was centered in spirit was everything. And from that, my whole practice really grew. I mean, I wasn't seeing clients as a professional until I graduated from the Barbara Brennan School, 31, after that healing. And then it was like my practice just exploded. And I actually experienced another heartbreak at that time, which was another catalyzer, but it was a relationship of deep, deep love anyway. It was beautiful exchange of love. And so I began to see women, one after the next, heartbroken, abused, raped, one after the next, after the next, after the next, all coming with similar stories. Through that process is when I developed, you know, what I like to do with people, which is to reconnect them to their spirituality, to their guides. So that healing that I got, I've given to many, many people. Because that healer trained me how to do it. And then connecting to the earth, deep earth rhythms, the true feminine, outside of the patriarchy. It was a big, big thing for me for a long time, like smash the patriarchy in a loving way as we unleash the beautiful feminine energy that's been suppressed for so long, you know what I mean? And now like we see a whole society waking up to this, and I'm like, whoo,
finally.
I can like lean back a little bit and like, everyone's sort of singing the tune I've been singing,
Yeah.
and so connecting to the earth and then connecting to the creativity flowing through the womb space, the absolute
Mm-hmm.
like primal force of life, creativity, sexuality, life purpose, all of that, like the joy of the creative spirit just flowing through. So those are like, and then training healers. I train a lot of healers too.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
So
I
do you
have
train the healers in the methodology that the healer gave you, or everything that you've learned?
everything that I've learned. I mean, he gave me so much. And then also, obviously, the Barbara Brennan School,
Yeah.
4 year, so much from there, right? I don't
Mm-hmm.
teach her method. Um, but I mean, over the years, after working with so many people, everyone's going to develop their own healership.
Of course. Yeah.
So, and because I was also an artist and a singer, all of that really flows into my work. So I bring in a lot of spiritual artists who are looking for ways to really focus in their purpose and their genius into something tangible, right? Because we're creating an entirely new paradigm right now on
Right.
Earth. So people are like, what do we do?
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a time, especially this year. I feel like it's been a time for people to learn how to go within, especially since we have no choice. We have to be inside. I know my
Yeah,
life hasn't shifted much because I mostly work from home and I work close to home. So my day-to-day life hasn't shifted, but for so many, just being at home all the time, not seeing friends and family, you have no choice but to go within. So I think a lot of people are taking the opportunity to figure out like who they are, and if they lost their job, it's like, okay, what else can I do, and taking on this
right.
responsibility to learn more about oneself. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. It's been like you thought you were doing that work before. Let's raise it,
Right. Absolutely. I
a
mean, it
few
happened for
levels.
me. Yeah. Like I was thought I was doing something, and then pandemic happened. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'm being called to do something else.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think it makes the spirit very clear. And I think we're seeing the way, and I knew this was going to happen. Like when you contract, there's always an expansion, right?
Hmm.
And I felt like the human spirit starting to like shake. And then and then it was like with the social justice, racial justice, all of
Right.
that, like the sheer explosion of energy from people like being forced to just deal with the things that they weren't able to deal with before because you're too busy doing the
Hmm.
day-to-day of your life. So not only the internal journey but the collective journey of like, no way, we got to change these things. Like, can't live like this anymore. This is a lie, living like this.
Yes, and
So
I hope it continues. That's my prayer, that it stays, the momentum continues, and people wake up to social injustice and all the hatred and all the violence, and moving towards a more peaceful, inclusive world. That's the dream.
well, I feel like it'll just keep going in rounds, right? Because we have so many different levels of consciousness operating on this planet right
Yes.
now. But yeah, I think it'll keep going. I think a new standard has been set. And even though I think things are getting worse as much as they're getting better before they get better, I'm an optimist. So I think they get better in the long term, even though right now there's, a lot of amplification of the yucky stuff as well, right?
But I think that's why this work is so important. I mean, so many women have gone through some level of sexual or physical trauma. It's nearly surreal. Like, I don't think I've met a woman that hasn't had anything. I think I've met maybe one or two in my entire life. There's always something, even if it's
Always something.
even if it's a microaggression or sexual harassment or something, like just getting groped on the subway. Like that happened to me when I was a teenager, and I was so confused. I'm like, who, what, why? It's like that feeling of not
Right.
feeling safe,
Yeah.
and it's not, and I just also feel like we're so lucky that we're in America, but there are places in the world where it's far worse to be a woman in
Yeah.
terms of safety and where you can
Mm-hmm.
be in the world by yourself. Like I was in Brazil and I literally was told, don't walk around by yourself at night. And even
Yeah.
Brazilian women don't walk around at night. When I was in Salvador, which was so mind boggling to me, but I was like, yeah, different parts of the world have different,
Mm-hmm.
we have to be in different spaces. But what I think is more important is finding safety within yourself. And that's something I've been working on presently. It's like feeling safe within my spirit, knowing that I have my guidance, I'm connected to source, that I feel safe within me. So wherever I go, I don't have this hypervigilance, which I feel like
Yeah.
as a Black woman, I've always had this like hypervigilance, always concerned about my safety, if something's going to happen. And that's something I think is so
Mm-hmm.
important as well, is just feeling safe within your being,
Yeah.
regardless of where you are.
I mean, absolutely. Absolutely. And then in that process of taking the time to feel safe within one's being, I think we have parameters in the external that help us to feel safe too. And when we honor those spaces within is when we start making better choices about what really
Mm-hmm.
nourishes us. I
Right.
mean, because we can, because of trauma or habit, keep ending up in unsafe environments. I know that was part of what was happening with me, is that I would just, because of the trauma, just go just like a magnet right back to these
Mm-hmm.
unsafe situations. And
Right.
as we, I mean, of course I had that healing, but also like it took years of sinking into the safe space within so that I could make the choice of actually living somewhere where I felt safe, of
Mm-hmm.
living in a way that nourished my spirit and made me and allowed me to relax.
True. And also I just want to point out, like, I know this healer was amazing, but you did
Yeah,
years of work so that healing could actually happen. So you actually
yeah,
did a lot of the healing. He pretty much took you over the edge,
he
because
did.
I want people to just understand that there's no miracle workers that can do the work for you. Like, you also have to do the work, and then healers assist
Yeah,
at that
that right
when your
healer,
body's ready.
when your body's ready and when it's your time, right?
Right.
It was right in
Exactly.
my Saturn return. So, it's like I did all that work, and then yes, it was just time. It was time for me to surrender and say,
Mm-hmm.
wow, I really need help here.
Mm-hmm.
Like I actually
Right.
can't, there was that place of like not blaming myself anymore, that
Mm-hmm.
and just being
Mm-hmm.
so done that I really, really handed over to spirit. I just said like, I got nothing. I got nothing left for this.
Mm-hmm.
And so that yes, it's like it's a relationship with the
Right.
healing force of life and with our own karmic and dharmic path.
Exactly. Exactly. And for those that don't know, can you talk about a little bit about a Saturn return? What that means?
Sure. Well, so Saturn is a planet in our universe, and that carries a lot of energy of like discipline and karma and responsibility and learning your lessons. And when you're in your late 20s, early 30s, it kind of comes right back to the place it was when you were born. So it literally, so you have your Saturn conjunct Saturn, and it can really amplify your karmic issues and make your life really challenging. Really forces you to deal with your stuff and
Mhm.
grow and mature.
Right. And it happens every 29, 28 years. So it should happen again in like what, late 40s, early 50s, something in there.
I think like 60, right?
60? Oh, yeah, 30, 30.
Yeah.
Yes, 60. So late, so 58, 60 something in there,
Mm-hmm.
62
Yeah,
in
and
there.
it's like a little more or less, yeah. But the thing is, Saturn ages like a fine wine. So the older you get, the more you've done with the stuff, dealt with your stuff, the more the benefits of Saturn
Hmm.
come in. So it's like the hard work miracle. Saturn rewards those who work hard. So if you worked hard, you get, and you have like, Saturn things happening later in life, they tend to not be as hard if you've done the work.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's good explanation, because I feel like a lot of people say Saturn return, and I'm like, it's not always Saturn return. You know how like people say, "Oh, it's Mercury retrograde," and I'm like, it's not Mercury retrograde. We can't.
It's new.
It's just like you're just not good with technology. You can't blame the planets.
Totally. I think like the way I experience the planets, and I'm actually like, I've always been obsessed with it, but I'm actually training to become a Vedic astrologer right now because
Oh Lord.
yeah, I
That
got
is
so starstruck like over this whole quarantine period. I got
real.
obsessed. Like I really just went, I don't know. I started experiencing the stars and the planets so deeply inside of myself that
Mhm.
it was like I just fell in love with them. Like I
That's
fell in love
amazing.
so much with Earth and the elements. All of a sudden, I was like, oh my God, Saturn, is that you? You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a process to learn Vedic astrology. It's so complicated. So
it is.
bravo. It is definitely like even whenever I get a reading, I'm always like, there's so much, so much. Yeah,
And that's what's so great about it because
yeah.
it's like they really mapped out the
Mm-hmm.
evolutionary spiral of life, you
They
know,
did.
and it's like so cool
It is very
because
cool.
it's taking everything I feel like I've studied and like landing it in this grand medicine wheel of creation.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's how it feels to me. And I'm just like, I'm like bedazzled by the whole thing.
Well, let me know when you're ready if you need test subjects for a reading.
Okay.
Nice. So we're gonna segue a little bit into um when you work with clients, what's like one of the first things that you do with them? Are they coming to you already experiencing healing work? How do you walk them through a process of reconnecting them to their spirit with do you talk about willingness, lifestyle changes? Like what's a little bit about tell us a little bit about your method of how you work with people that you've done for yourself and that has worked for your clients.
Okay. Well, clients come to me for different reasons, right? But if I have someone, I have a lot of people who are spiritually open, but they have no idea what to do with it. They
Mm,
come in because they're like, wow, I had this experience and this angel started talking to me and it changed my entire life. And I don't know how to like integrate this with my day job at the accountant's office. You know what I mean?
right.
And so I begin to take them on a process of learning how to open up their guidance, talk to guides, angels, all that kind of stuff while they're developing a connection to their inner self,
Mhm.
and their inner divine self and everything. And I just mentor them and teach them over a period of time. And I have specific methods to learn how to channel, talk to guides, receive guidance
Mhm.
that I've been developing since 2006.
Mhm.
So it's so that and that is such a joy, and that becomes then like the beginning stages of training the healer. A lot of those
Mhm.
people, if they're really serious, then sort of jump on board to start developing a healing practice if they're ready. And I'm can be a little old school because I you know I have programs that are like 6 months, but I also work and mentor with people over years to help them step into their healership because we can get a lot of trainees in different places now, but
Mhm.
bringing it all together into your unique spark and learning how to manage a practice. I mean, the amount of energy, maturity, space holding, responsibility, business savvy, marketing savvy. I mean, it's a
Mhm.
beast.
It is.
So being able to like, you know, walk them through that process as they're going through their own awakening, which is like so intense. So
Right.
that's one type of client.
Okay.
Then I have other clients, the women who come in with this trauma, and we help to clean up the womb space and heal the broken hearts and get their system really anchored into the true feminine codes of the earth,
Mhm.
which initially I started calling womb power, their womb power, because
Yeah,
you know we're strong.
we are.
And this whole idea that we're supposed to be less than is ridiculous. And I have never met a woman who, once they activated their womb power, didn't start going like full goddess. You know, I don't know a lot of weak or meek women, I should say, underneath it all. It's
Mhm.
learned behavior most of the time. The feminine spirit is just outrageously strong. So start bringing that in, working through trauma, all that kind of stuff. So, and then I guess and by the way, I also work with men. I don't just work with women or non-binary, like really anyone who's brought forth or called to me, I'm happy to work with. My path has been of feminine healing. So that's what I tend to focus on. Like, that's what I came here to do. So that's what I do. But I work with anybody. So men come, and that's always an interesting process, because depending on how old they are, really, like the younger men are so much more emotionally integrated because it wasn't like beaten out of them. Older men, really, really different process to work with them, to have them open to their spirituality and learn to let go and just drop in to life without having to control it or feel like they just always have to be the top dog. Like, it's actually the whole male aspect of the, false patriarchy, as I call it, it's just very painful, and so grateful to see the men's work start to get bigger and bigger, and more support for men as we all become more conscious, right? But and the other thing I love to do is I work with healers and artists and creative spiritual people to develop their creativity, oftentimes writing books, making music, anything, creating their business. Like, I just love to mentor the creative spirit flowing through somebody and seeing where we land. I'd love to help catalyze that. I love people who come in and they're like, I don't know, I just feel like I have something that wants to birth, but I don't know what it is. That's like, to me, like the sweet spot. Like, let's help open that up and bring it through. And I've become like really, really fascinated with how the creative energy moves through the levels and dimensions and the chakras, and where we get stuck, why we get stuck, how to open that up, it's like that's like one of my most favorite things to do, really.
Nice. I love it. That's great. Okay. So here's some infinite love questions. How do you use love in your work?
Well, I think it takes a lot of bravery to sit in love with people through their darkest night. You're modeling that love to them. You're like, for me, I'm teaching people how to love these rejected aspects of self, unknown aspects of self that feel just way too shameful, too much, too little, too anything. It's love that heals this. It's love for every single bit of ourselves that builds the foundation for creativity, for expression, for being visible, for prosperity, for healthy relationships and friendships. Like, love is that love is like strong. Again, love is real strong when you're really committed to it as a practice. And of course, we could say that love is flowing through everything, but the process of like learning to love yourself as a science, not even as like well, I really love myself, but like, whoa, that part of me that just said something mean to somebody. I have a big mouth. Sometimes I say the wrong thing. That's been like, and then I like hate myself for it, or I have, big practice to sit with that like uncontrollable mouth, and just be like, you're worth loving. You're worth loving. So love is the foundational element of all healing.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
It's what we were born to do. We're just letting go of everything that prevents us from being able to experience that love, share that love, and receive that love.
Beautiful. So how do you feel that so this is a big purpose for you, everything that you have gone through. How do you see your work used to lift up humanity?
Well, I am like just absolutely possessed with reconnecting as many people as possible to their divine selves and to the earth. I just think that's what we need. And of course to each other, right? But as we reclaim our sense of rootedness and belonging to this planet, we really can relax into the experience more, because we'll know it more. If we have this divine connection, we know we don't just get stuck in the ego. If we have the connection to earth, we understand that we're loved unconditionally by this great mother who gives us everything we need. we understand in connecting with the earth that we all have these beautiful myths and traditions and dances and rites of passages that move through every race on this planet. And as we rediscover that in ourselves, we can respect other people's cultures because we know how precious it is, and how those cultures really flow from the earth, from the dance and the love of the earth and of the sky coming together in this union to create all of this magic for us. And so, so much of helping humanity, I think, is just helping us to remember who we really are and what's good about us. And like especially, because I'm white right now, there's so much self-hatred in the white race. There's so much guilt. There's so much violence that's been left unhealed, unseen. Mm-hmm. And so I have worked with a lot of European Americans and that whole thing to help reconnect and forgive themselves for just even being born this way, helping with that projection. There's a huge projection too, and getting to remember who we are, getting to remember what's good, forgiving and taking responsibility and all that stuff. It's a huge part of my work and my small little piece of what can help humanity come back together. Doing a course right now with an Irish woman, and we're helping Americans to reconnect to their indigenous roots, their Irish Celtic roots, and start to really feel that energy flowing through them and heal that fragmentation of when everybody left usually for traumatic reasons and said goodbye to their whole everything. Mm-hmm. As every immigrant or slave had to, it's gone. That they're like, coming to America means, and there's different, of course, levels of trauma around it, but it means cutting off from who you were and becoming this ideal. That was how it was until the last 10 years, right? Where it started to become like, hey, we get to keep our identity. It wasn't ever like that before. True. So, all of the Italianness and Irishness, I didn't even know I was Italian until I was a teenager, because it was shameful in our family to be Italian.
Really?
Oh yeah, because of the discrimination was so intense. True. Just one generation back. So the idea was let's be as waspy as we can, Mm-hmm. So I thought that's all we were. I thought we were just that. But really, when I did all the research, Italian and Irish, and French, it was all of this really fun and exciting energy that flowed through our lines that made a lot more sense for my personality. So, so I've had the pleasure of journeying to meet my ancestors in Ireland, and I have many countries. I got to do Italy too. I got to do Germany. I got to do, there's all that. I'm really just an amalgamation of the entire continent and some Middle East. But so it's that to me is really exciting and mm-hmm. helping. Before I discovered where I came from, I literally thought I just fell off of a cloud and landed on the planet as an evil white person.
Oh no!
It was so. I grew up in a very Jewish and multicultural area, so we learned all about the Holocaust early.
Right.
And I just was always oh God, really young age. So learning about the roots is what helped heal a lot of that, and made me feel like I belonged on this planet, and that there was good things running through me. So yeah, just helping as many people to see that and to remember where we came from. And yeah.
That's beautiful work, especially with the white people that live here, because I feel like that's true. There's so many cultures that they're unaware of because they are American, but they came from somewhere. They didn't just land here. And they experienced a lot of violence in Europe, the ones that came over here. So it was living in Europe at that time, and if you were not part of that European culture, it was a traumatic experience for them. So, and then they brought that violence back here, and then the cycle continued. So
it was just the way it was, right?
Yeah.
It was just the way it was.
If you're an oppressed person, you become the oppressor unless you do some healing to break that cycle within yourself.
Right. And nobody was doing that at that time. We're doing it now.
Yeah.
It's real messy.
It's very messy. And it's painful. And you also have to have that willingness to see those aspects of yourself that exist within you that are, because I think a lot of
Yeah.
times when people think of ancestral work, they're like, oh, but that was so long ago, that has nothing to do with me. I think it's really about understanding who you are,
Yeah.
and, the having that
Well,
deeper connection.
right. And then most indigenous work and ceremonial work and family constellation work, we know that we are carrying the burdens of our ancestors within us unless we've
Mm-hmm.
healed it, unless we take that time to heal it and go into these ancestral wounds and allow the spirit of the divine to come and help us heal these things as a lineage, as a family. They just get passed on. They become mental illness, they become violence, they become, weird quirks, even diseases. And so as we sit with our ancestors and remember that sacred connection,
Yeah.
and part of what I teach is like where these ancestors live, how we contact them, how we talk to them, how we bring healing to these lines, and what that means for the larger human family.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's just so many levels of all of this.
Absolutely. Let's see here. So we're going to do the quick fire questions. What do you love
Okay.
most about your life?
Honestly, the trees that surround me
Nice.
in the forest where I live.
It's beautiful.
I
Nature.
just nature.
Okay. How do you feel you receive love?
I receive love from, oh, besides the trees. Um, I love how I have the love that I receive with my friends and my community.
Mm.
I just feel so loved.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay. When do you feel the most love?
When I open my heart, when I'm brave enough to fully open and let it in.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And where has love created a miracle in your life? No, there's so many miracles, but
I know, right? I'm like, God, so many miracles. But I'm going to say this. I don't know if she'll listen to it, but I feel like love healed the relationship with my mother. We had a tough relationship, very tough, both sides. We were both tough. But I mean, the love between family members and especially mother-daughter, like
Mm-hmm.
it's irrational and amazing and
Yeah.
bonded, and I feel like the commitment to stay in the alchemy of that
Mm-hmm.
fire, which was decades long struggle, into surrender and I don't know, into it was love. And then in my later years to have healed that relationship, that's the biggest miracle in my life.
That's beautiful and inspiring. I feel like millions of mother-daughter relationships need so much love and compassion and healing. It's a tough one. It's a tough
Yeah.
one. And men
Oh
too. I
yeah.
feel like the whole relationship to mom and just parents in general, honestly, because so many parents are disassociated and haven't done their work, and then they pass it on to their children, especially children I find that are empathic and sensitive and spiritual, and having parents that are not as supportive or don't understand it. It's
Whew.
childhood is rough. Honestly, it's almost like a rite of passage. Like you come on this planet, you have an intense childhood, and then you have to like work your way around it and through it to get to the other
Yep.
side. But unfortunately, so many people don't, because it's
I know.
hard work.
It's hard work, and if you incarnated to be a healer for your family lineage and for the planet, your lessons start real early.
Like right from
Right away.
utero.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, you
Ah!
come out like, what is happening?
What
My
was
dad,
I
I know. My dad
And
said
what? Yeah.
when they took me out of my mom's belly, I was a C-section, my eyes popped open and I was staring at him like, 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 where
Where
am I?
am I? Exactly. That's appropriate. We have no idea where we are.
And I looked him dead in the eye, and my dad was taken back because infants supposedly don't look because they're
Right.
and the nurse was like, "Oh, she can't see you." And my dad's like, "Oh yeah, she can." Like, I literally was looking at him like, "What is happening?" And I feel like that is the theme of my life. I'm just like, what is going on?
All of us, we're just aware of it, right? It's good and bad to be aware of it. Like sometimes I think about all the fighting and craziness going on. I'm like, wow, everyone's fighting and still we have no idea what's going on. We have no idea why we're
Yeah.
here. Like we're fighting over all these things when we're just a bunch of weirdos on this planet here rotating in the middle of space. We have no idea how any of this got here, but like,
Yeah.
you know,
And we're
let's fight
fighting.
about masks all year.
I know. I know that, but it's interesting because I think that's what fear does. Fear is a very powerful energy. It can take
Yes,
you.
it
It
is.
could, it takes over. It just takes over, and there's no
It does.
rationality. There's nothing. Like when you're in that deep, deep fear that hits you in the reptilian brain, that's it.
Yeah, it's over.
No,
It's
you can't.
survival mode.
Yeah, you can't even talk to people. They're just like, and it's not even about the mask. It's on such a deeper issue, but they're not.
Right.
Most people don't want to go there, so they're focusing on the mask. And before it was a
Yeah,
toilet paper, it was just like we're gonna focus on something that seems benign because the deeper issue is so much more painful to
yeah,
look
absolutely.
at. So we're all just watching everyone just go crazy, and I'm like, okay, yeah,
And this kind of brings us back to safety, like you were saying. And you know, there were many years I did a lot of ceremonies with indigenous peoples all through North, Central, and South America. And this was in like the 2006, 7, 8. And they all just said, this is coming. Like this, they were talking about. We thought it might happen in 2012, but they said, you know, this thing is going to come. Get somewhere safe. Get somewhere
mm,
where you know your water, you know your community, you know, you can be with God, you can be safe. And I listened. You know, I was really like, okay, I'm going to do that.
yeah,
And I'm
true,
so grateful. So grateful to have
yeah,
ridden this whole thing out in the middle of the forest with like-minded people who we paid a lot of attention to our mindset and would get together at a safe distance and meditate and you know
yeah,
allow the divine energies to flow through us and anchor us so that we stayed out of the fear. And it was
yeah.
just really grateful to the indigenous people for telling me that.
Yeah, girl, that's a blessing. I was in LA 2 years ago and I had this huge push to get out. Like, Lee, you need to leave LA. You need to leave LA. And I left LA and I came up here to the Bay. And I am so grateful that I did because if I was doing COVID in LA, like, I would have been freaking out because I would have
Yeah.
had no friends. I would have been by myself. It would have just, and in the city, like, it just would have been terrible. Like, I'm so happy to be where I'm at, where it's like the suburbs, there's trees, it's nature, there's hiking. So I don't feel so isolated in this box. Like the people, like my mom is in New York City, but she's in an apartment and no nature. It's just not
Oh,
the same
oh God,
as,
that's so hard.
yeah,
I know
it's
some
hard.
people are doing all right with
Yeah.
it, you know, if they're like, if that's who they are, but if that's not who you are, like, oh my gosh.
Well, the thing is, when you're like, I grew up in New York City, right? So when you grow up in New York City, your connection to nature is so disconnected and you don't
Right.
really think about it. Like, I grew up right in between Times Square and Central Park. So I had Central Park, but I never saw the sky until I was 18, like the full sky. I never
Yeah.
saw stars. I never really walked on grass or trails. I didn't do any of that till I was like in my 20s. Like for me, nature was like, it was concrete and a tiny little square of sky that you see in between buildings and Central Park. My parents don't hike, they don't do nature, they don't do any of those things. So I never went camping. So for me, when you're in that environment, you almost don't even think about it. You're just like, it's not till I left New York that I was like, oh my God, there's this whole expanse of the world that you don't experience when you're born in Manhattan. You're just kind of stuck in that island, and that's all you focus on because it's survival. You're like, you got to get there, you got to go there, you got to get on the subway, you got to live. You're not thinking about, let me hug a tree and lay down on the grass because it'll be filled with poop, and you're like, like it's just not. It's just a different mentality, total different mentality.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, it took me years to be able to be like, oh my God, there's other things out here. So my mom isn't thinking about it.
Right. Exactly.
It doesn't even occur to her that she's stuck in a little apartment in Manhattan.
That's her home.
Yeah, it's just like it doesn't, and it wouldn't have occurred to me either if I was, when I was a kid living there and I had to quarantine in my apartment. I wouldn't think about all the things I would have had if I was somewhere else.
Right.
That's just
Yes. I
the
grew up with
reality.
nature and trees and everything. So when I moved into the city, like, I think there wasn't a day that went by that I wasn't like, like missing that connection, But like when you grow up in the New York suburbs, like you move to the city in your
Of
20s and
course.
you get a
Yeah.
job. That's what you
Hmm.
do.
Right.
So that's what I did. And I'd be like, like, I'd try to get apartments where I could just see a tree. All I wanted was to be able to see a tree. If I could see a tree from my window, I might survive, the day.
Hmm.
It was very
Yeah, and
intense.
it is. Now I can't imagine. Like for me, that's one of my big criteria. It's like wherever I live, there needs to be trees on the property. Like I need to be able to go outside. It needs to be close to a trail. There just needs to be nature. Like I can't do it anymore. Like it's like it's so out of me now that leaving LA, I'm just like, I'm never gonna live in the city ever.
Yeah.
Ever. I want to live in the country, quiet. I like absolutely love it. And it's like I've always felt like I was a country girl that grew up in the city. Like, because I never felt
Right.
comfortable in the city. I was always like, this
Yeah.
doesn't feel right. And then when I moved to like country, meaning like the suburbs, like I really would love to live in the real deal country. But as of now, I live in the suburbs of San Francisco, which feels like
Yeah.
the country, but it's not really. Um,
It's not really nice though. I mean, it's really nice. The suburb I grew up was just like full of trees and flowers and land. It
yeah,
was, great. So
yeah, but there's something about living like I mean, those little towns that are quiet and there's just, you have a house that has acres around it. It's quiet. You can like walk around. That's like my dream.
yeah.
That's my life goal, is to have a beautiful house somewhere at the bottom of a mountain, access to a lake,
Wow.
super quiet.
Well, that's made be so.
One
So it
day,
is.
that's 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 my goal, that's where I want to retire, somewhere quiet like that.
Yeah.
We'll see. But until then, I'm enjoying my life in the Bay Area. I feel very grateful. Yeah.
Lovely.
Well, this has been a pleasure. So how could people find you?
CCTreadway.com.
Okay.
I just try to make it easy.
Is CC short for something?
Yes, it is short for Caroline Cornelia.
Caroline Cornelia. That's really beautiful.
Thank you. It's a southern name
It
because
really is.
I have half New Yorkers and half Southerners. And actually, my grandmother was named after the Carolinas, like that Southern.
Wow.
And then I was named after her.
So,
So, or maybe it was my great grandmother who ended up going by Lena, and then my grandmother went by Caroline, and then I'm
mhm.
Caroline. But people started calling me Cece when I was in nursery school, so it stuck.
Yeah, people try to start calling me CC because of my initials, and I was like, nah.
No, you didn't go for it. But then
Mm-mm.
if we had had an interview and both of us named Cece, because that never happens. Actually, I'm so proprietary over it that when I meet another Cece, I'm like, what's that about? Because it's so rare.
Yeah, people tried, and I was like, nah. Or my middle name is Jamila, so people try to call me CJ, and I was like, no. I prefer CC to CJ. And I don't know, I just never. Yeah, I had one boyfriend that tried to call me that, and I was like,
And
no,
Jamila, so beautiful.
thank you. That's what it means. But I think you're a perfect CC. I think CC is a great, it fits you well. But I was always curious about your full name. So thanks for
There
sharing.
were like times where I was like, okay, I'm going to start going by Caroline. And it just never stuck because people they like saying Cece.
Yeah, no, CC's great. I mean, I've met a few CCs and I feel like it always matches their personality. Like, and I also feel like your name's so unique because it's you. You have your ancestral names, but then CC is you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's not connected to anyone else. Like you've created your own being. You know how like some people change their name? Kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I always sort of toyed with that. But then I was like, CC Treadway is kind of cool. Like, I don't know. I think that one's good. Why change it? It's working.
I know. I wanted to change my name too, but I was like, nah.
Well, because you always end up changing it back. That's like
right.
what happens is that people end up changing it back. So I was like, I'll just skip that step.
Cool. So people can go to your website and find out more about you and how to work with you and all of that.
Yes, that's all there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. I love talking to you and learning more about you and how your infinite love work is spreading around the world. It's awesome. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was absolutely wonderful. Also, just so good to talk to you and sink in and have a good time. And I forgot we were, doing an interview at a certain point. So well, that's always a good sign.
Cool. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe and tune in on Tuesdays for new episodes. For more information about me, please follow me on Instagram at Corinne J. Camara and my website, CorinneCamara.com. Sending you lots of infinite love.